Good afternoon, Washington, D.C. Welcome to another edition of the Browder File Show. We're here to talk about the Black Nile. The Black Nile, which has its origins in equatorial Africa, flows out of Uganda, flows out of Ethiopia. The two rivers, the White Nile and the Blue Nile, come together in Sudan and form the singular Nile River, which continues its journey through Sudan and into the entire nation of Egypt and empties into the Mediterranean Sea. It's all the Black Nile. And because today's programming here at WPFW is about the amplification of Sudan, we're going to do our part to tell the story of Sudan. We're not going to talk about Sudan under conflict. We want to go back. We want to go way back and talk about Sudan as one of the oldest civilizations ever recorded. We want to talk about why Sudan is so important. It's been marginalized. We hear about conflicts in other parts of the world, conflicts in the Middle East, conflicts in Europe, but people have a tendency to disregard conflicts in Africa. So today's program, Amplify Sudan, is critically important because it puts the focus where the focus should be on us, on our people, on issues that matter to us. But before we get into our show, our contribution to Amplify Sudan, I want to spend a few minutes and thank everyone for the feedback, the positive feedback they gave me over the past week regarding last Wednesday's show. Last Wednesday's show was titled A Case for Black Fathers, the impact of Black fatherlessness on Black children, the Black family, and the Black community. My guests were two bookends from WPFW, Brother Kaba, who's on Mondays from 3 to 5, and Brother Bobby Rocks, who's on Fridays from 3 to 5. And I invited these brothers on because they both are single fathers. They both are models of what Black fatherhood and Black manhood is all about. And I wanted to discuss a topic that was not only near and dear to our three collective hearts, but obviously it was a topic that was near and dear to the hearts of so many people. We received emails and calls from folk who said that last week's show was probably, one person told me that it was in the top three. This show is our 52nd show. And so the feedback was so positive, so affirming, that we are going to do a part 2 for A Case for Black Fathers. That will probably be done on Kaba's show sometime in the near future. And there's also talks in the work for doing a live version of this discussion. We're looking at a venue, we're looking at dates, and we'll let you know. And if I can project into the future based on our discussion of a topic that really needs to be discussed in public, there may even be a part 3, and we will more than likely begin to look at ways we can amplify this discussion about Black parenting to include Black mothers, to include Black grandparents, to have a dialogue that we need to have for the benefit of our children who are often neglected due to circumstances beyond their control. So stay tuned to Kaba's show on Monday, my show on Wednesdays, and Bobby's show on Fridays, and we'll let you know what the next steps are as we continue our discussion about Black families and why we need to pay more attention. Another point I wanted to bring to your attention regarding our shows, sometimes shows run over. Our conversation gets so hot and heavy that we exceed the hour allotted for the Browder File show, and we go into the Overflow room where we extend our conversations on my YouTube channel. And so you can watch those shows after it's posted, and they're usually posted within a 24-hour period of our airing. And you can just go to YouTube and type in Browder File in the search bar, and you'll pull up all of the shows that we've done. and all of the extended conversations that we've had. And I've got a feeling that today's show will be no different than previous shows. We've got a lot to share with you, and we will more than likely go into the overflow room where you will not only hear our voices, but see the faces, and we may even have some additional content. So I urge you all to stay plugged in. And the beautiful thing about YouTube is that you can watch the shows anytime. So since this day is devoted to the amplification of Sudan and discussing not just the conflict in Sudan, the 2-year conflict in Sudan, but also the history of Kush before it became Sudan. So you can go to the YouTube channel after this day of programming is over, because after me, we're going to have Eugenia Charles discuss Sudanese refugees. At 8 o'clock, we're going to have Donald Temple with his Loveology show, and he's going to have a Sudanese reporter, I think the co-producer of this Amplify Sudan programming is going to be his guest. And then Jordan Strudwick will be on at 10 o'clock with the Blue Notes for Sudan. So there will be a full day of programming for Sudan. And just take note of any other activities you want to engage in after you have fully immersed yourself in more knowledge about Sudan and why it's important, and find ways that we can begin to increase awareness about the atrocities that are committed in Sudan. So my regular show for today has been preempted due to today's Amplify Sudan programming. And I'm pleased to invite 2 guests to be with me on today's program. These guests are scholars and experts in their related fields. What's good about my guests today, Amoye, Neblett, and Amadeuz Christ, what's good about my 2 guests is that I've known them for several years. We've traveled to Egypt together, and we also traveled to Sudan together. We were blessed to travel to Sudan in July of 2016 with Renoko Rashidi. So we can give you some firsthand views on why Sudan is important. And what my objective is this evening is to follow up on some of the comments that were made by the guests in the previous show on Sophie's Parlor. Sister Nadia, who is Sudanese, talked about her country, talked about her hometown, and how hospitable the people in Sudan are. She talked about the fact that Sudan is one of the oldest documented civilizations on the planet. There are aspects of ancient Sudanese history, or I like to refer to it as ancient Kushite history, because Sudan, as we should know, is an Arabic word that refers to the black people of that country. But Kush is the indigenous term for that country when it was ruled by indigenous Africans. And I'm always respectful of the importance of referring to people and the lands that indigenous people use to refer to their land. So you hear me oftentimes talk about Kemet, which is the country that we now call Egypt. But it's about being respectful of those who lived and died in the lands, and also talking about and respecting the legacy that we have inherited. The war in Sudan has captured a lot of attention, and I'm not going to go into many of the statistics about the war and the casualties of the war. You've heard that on the other shows that aired during today's Amplify Sudan programming. But I do want to share with you a quote from a reporter. I believe it was a French reporter who was describing some of the atrocities in Sudan. He said that the war in Sudan is destroying not just the country's future, but also the country's past. And in that context, I was taken when I heard about the destruction of the Sudanese National Museum, the looting of the museum. It was in April of 2023 that the rebels the RSF paramilitary forces took control of Khartoum, the capital of Sudan, and they raided the Sudan National Museum, which contains over 100,000 artifacts. And from what I've read and reports that I've gotten from colleagues of mine who I have worked with in Egypt and who also do archaeological work in Sudan, they said that the museum was totally destroyed. And according to reports, 90% of the 100,000 artifacts are gone or have been destroyed. We're talking about priceless items of gold and jewelry and pottery and mummies and sarcophagi were destroyed or are missing. And the artifacts that are missing are believed to have been smuggled out of the country, sold to art collectors and museum collectors from Europe and other parts of the world. And these items have been stolen and sold in order to finance the war, in order to buy more rifles, buy more ammunition, buy more missiles and drones and things of that nature. So this is a tragedy on multiple levels. I've also read that the RSF forces have raided archaeological sites, the sites near Meroe, a crucial center of ancient Kushite history and culture. Historic buildings within Khartoum have been damaged during the fightings. And the damage of these buildings is probably permanent. If Sudan ever recovers from this conflict, these buildings will probably never be restored because the priority of the country is to care for its people. And I get that. I understand that. So I can't even begin to imagine all of the objects that will be lost forever. And another important fact is that within the past decade, the Sudanese government has been amping up the training of their archaeologists, the training of museum staff and other professionals who have begun to take the lead in doing this archaeological research. Most of the people who do excavations in Sudan are foreigners from Europe, from America, from South America. There are very few Sudanese actively involved in this work. So a generation of people have lost the opportunity to apply their skills. So this war is impacting this nation on so many different levels. And so my guests today are going to help us talk about what has been lost and what we can do to acknowledge the loss and how we can hold on to memories of things that have been lost. And possibly there may be some opportunities for us to discuss what we can do to preserve what remains. So again, my guests today are Amoye Neblett, who is the author of a new book called Insuit, The Spirits of Our Ancestors, the Indigenous Black Rulers of Egypt. And hopefully we'll also talk about the indigenous Black rulers of Kush or Sudan as well. And my other guest is filmmaker Amadeuz Christ, who's done 3 films about history of Nile Valley, history of Africa. And within these films is some incredible footage that he was able to capture during his trip to Sudan and Egypt. So brothers, welcome to the Browder File Show. How are you?
Great.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you for having us.
All right, it's my pleasure. And brother Amoye, I'd like for you to set the tone in us talking about the ancestors in the Nile Valley, the Kushite ancestors in the Nile Valley, by offering a verbal libation, if you will, a tribute, acknowledgement to these ancestors.
Yes, of course. Hotep Dinasut Wasir Neb Shudu, Metre Ea Neb Abju, Neb Nehehe, Hotep Impu, Kantisha Nefer Teptuef, Hotep Amun, the hidden one, Amun Ashur Vanu, self-created one. Disanu Paret Karu Tahenket, Kakao, Ka Apatu, Ka Sheshu, Ka Menkatu, Basanetcha, Ka Meket, Ket, Mbet, Neferet, Wabet, Didet, Pet, Kimata, Inet, Hapi, Unk, Ench, Netcher, In, Imaki, Amanarenus, Ma'akuru, Inka, In, Imaki, Pianki, Ma'akuru, Inka, In, Imaki, Amana Shiketo, Ma'akuru, Inka, In, Shabaka, Ma'akuru, Inka, In, Imaki, Amana Tore, Ma'akuru, Inka, In, Tahaka, Ma'akuru, Inka, In, Imaki, Naheka, Ma'akuru, Inka, In, Imaki, Tarakamun, Ma'akuru, Dwa Neteru, Dwa Neteru, Dwa Neteru. That is a voice offering that is a very old uh, offering that you see in the tombs of Kemet and also in Kush Nubia. That gives it's like how we do in the rest of Africa when we give a libation. This is a voice offering that feeds the spirits, the Ka of these ancestors. And we welcome in their presence here in this meeting today.
Thank you for that offering, my brother. So the language you were speaking is commonly referred to as Medu Neter, or what the Greeks call hieroglyphics. What do you know? What can you tell our listeners about the origins of that text, hieroglyphics?
Well, it's a language that was indigenous. It came out of the Nile Valley. Uh, we don't know exactly the point where it was created, but it started around 3100 BC, thereabouts, maybe a little earlier. And it's it's a very interesting language. Now, the people in Kush also was able to communicate in that language, although they had different languages as well, because the kingdom of Kush, just like the kingdoms of Kemet, consisted of lots of different ethnic groups of Africans. So the Medu Neter was spoken by the Kushites as well as the Kemites.
Mm-hmm. I want to also just share with our listeners, particularly those who live in the Washington, D.C. community, or anyone who will be traveling to D.C. in the near future, I would encourage you to go to the Smithsonian Museum of Natural History, which is a couple of blocks east of the National Museum of African American History and Culture. All of the museums, Smithsonian museums, are now open since the government shutdown has ended. In the Smithsonian Museum of Natural History, um, there is a room that focuses on Africa specifically, West Africa and East Africa. And in that room, as soon as you walk into that room, you'll see on the right side a display about Kemet, ancient Egypt. And on the left side, you'll see a display about Kush. And what's important to note is that there are a couple of passages from noted Kemetic and Cushitic scholars who state that the history of Kush is as old as Kemet. Both nations developed around the same time, so we're looking about 3100, 3200 BC. They became nation states. But after Kemet fell, and was no longer ruled by indigenous Africans, and that was about 325 BC. After Kemet fell, Kush became an independent or remained an independent African nation for almost an additional 1,000 years. So, in that context, the history of Kush or ancient Nubia or ancient Sudan parallels that of Kemet and is older, lasted longer than that of of Kemet. So why don't we know this? Why isn't the average person aware that this history is as grand as that of ancient Egypt, which everyone freely and openly talks about?
Well, there's several reasons for that. first of all, the Europeans, when they discovered uh, ancient Kemet and Champollion deciphered the metal metric, was able to read the hieroglyphic language. Of course, the narrative that they tried to create was that Kemet was not an African civilization. That it was, according to James Henry Breasted, it was created by the great white race that came from, he drew a circle around Africa and Europe and said that the great white race had descended into Kemet and created this civilization.
Yeah, Brester was also responsible for coining the phrase dark-skinned Caucasians. Right.
Which was very strange because if this great white race came into Africa and civilized, brought this civilization, they didn't have it where they came from.
Mm-hmm.
And as this narrative started to, they tried to make traction with it. They came up with that great that thing about the dark-skinned Caucasians that created the civilization. But they tried to separate Egypt from Africa, basically, and so the narrative was that none of this stuff had to do anything to do with Africa, and that the Kushite, which the history, as you pointed out, was around the same. I mean, you go back to the A group, what Reisner called the A group, which was also some idiotic kind of notation to give people. He called them the A group and the C group. But these were early Kushites people that lived, their culture is just as old as Kemet. As a matter of fact, some of the iconography of the early kings came from the south and Kush. So, there was a mingling of the cultures. These people coexist. They traded together. They lived together. They fought each other at times. And but the history, to go back to your question, the history was separated between Kemet and Kush because they tried to push Kemet as a white civilization, and they conceded that Nubia, since it was so far to the south, was an indigenous African civilization. Then later on, which, it's when you open up and you talked about the destruction, it just really hit my heart. It was devastating because I didn't know all of the details of that. But that's very similar to what happened when they constructed the Aswan Dam and they destroyed a lot of the history of Kush was destroyed. It's laying under in the water in the Aswan Dam. I mean, thousands of years of history was lost. Temples, tombs, and more importantly, people's homes, they were uprooted and they had to be scattered to different places. And all of that history was gone.
Exactly.
And then, the Kushites themselves, they had their own language. And, since the Egyptologists didn't think that Kush was worth studying, they didn't decipher any of the languages there. They only focused on the metal metric that the Kushites had spoken, and so there's no permanent records of that area about their history other than what the Kemites wrote about it.
Sure. And you mentioned a couple of things that I want to comment on, and then I'll bring Brother Amadeuz into the conversation to talk about his work. You mentioned George Reisner, who was with the Boston Museum of Fine Arts and Harvard University. Reisner was the first European of note, person of European ancestry of note, to go in and explore Kush or ancient Sudan. And he became one of the foremost authorities. And when he found the remains of temples and tombs and monuments, Reisner stated, this Harvard professor stated that the artifacts that he found in Kush in Sudan were too fine to have been crafted by Negroes. So he advanced this notion that it had to be a race of outsiders who came in and conquered the land and built all of these artifacts. So this idea of taking African greatness out of Africa leads to the work that you've been doing, Brother Amadeus, with your films, Out of Darkness. You know, Africa was referred to as the dark continent. And so your three films, the title of your three films addresses this issue of taking Africa out of darkness. What was the impetus behind you using these names in the titles and subtitles of your three documentaries?
Yeah, well, I came into this knowledge not as a historian or an archaeologist or anthropologist. I came into this knowledge strictly from a filmmaker standpoint. I was not introduced to any of this information as a young person. I'm sure as many other young Black men are. I was taught that our history began with slavery, even though as a kid, I always had a strong connection and a fascination with Egypt. I remember in sixth grade, we had to pick a project to do, a book report, and I picked Egypt. Little did I know that I would end up there later on in my life. But I was just always fascinated with Egypt, the history of it. I didn't know that Egypt was the cradle of civilization. I always thought that was, the Greeks. They taught us about Rome and Greece, but never Egypt. And I thought that was very peculiar. I didn't know that Egypt, was the birthplace of math, science, medicine, astronomy, architecture, spiritual systems, and even writing. So I always say that I came into film almost by accident. I was always very fond of movies. In fact, that was one of my fondest memories of being with my father, is that we would always watch movies. So I kind of got the film language implanted in me at an early age. I had a brief stint in music, and that kind of segued into me doing music videos. After a while, I got frustrated with the music industry and decided that I wanted to kind of use my talents for positive and to help my people and to showcase who we were. I originally was going to just do a film about the effects of slavery, but when I started to get into where we were before slavery, that's when I went down a rabbit hole and I figured out how much of our history had been hidden from us, going all the way back to 7500 BC. And I decided, I have to bring this to light. I have to bring, or at least help to bring our people out of darkness. And that's what I did. My first film, Out of Darkness, was released in 2015, largely spearheaded by by you, Mr. Browder, after meeting you at Pan African City Alive. And when I did the first Out of Darkness, I hadn't gone to Egypt yet. This was 2015, 2016. You granted me the opportunity to go to Kemet, where we ended up spending 2 weeks there, a week at your site over in South Asasif, and then a week in Sudan. And as a filmmaker, and actually taking this pilgrimage, this holy pilgrimage that I like to call it, for the first time, and actually seeing all of this stuff with my own eyes and being blown away by the scope of it, the size of it, blew me away. So that led me to do the 2 follow-up films, Heavy as the Crown Volume 1 and Volume 2, with all of the footage that I captured while in Egypt during that trip, 2016.
You're listening to the voice of Amadeus Christ, filmmaker. You heard previously from Amoye Neblett, a comedic scholar who has a new publication out, which he'll talk about in a few minutes. And you're listening to the Browder Files Show, our contribution to WPFW's all-day programming, Amplify Sudan. So let me ask both of y'all, since we had the pleasure, we had the honor of traveling to Sudan together with the late great Dr. Renoka Rashidi. Let me ask each of you to share with our audience what that experience was like traveling through Sudan. So Moya, you're the elder, so I'll defer to you.
Okay, so it was a life-changing experience for me. But I want to segue back to we were talking about what was lost by this art.
So Moya, can I ask you to turn your volume up a little bit? You're a little low. So if you
Okay,
can turn your volume up or sit a little bit closer to the microphone, we'll
okay,
be able to hear you better.
yeah, I have to sit closer to the microphone, I think.
Okay.
So yeah, the destruction of the Antiquities and the Sudanese Museum uh, is compounded by what was lost 65 years ago with the construction of the Aswan Dam. But you know, the things there's a blessing sometimes in where you least expect to find it. On that trip uh, that we made to Sudan, I had the fortune of watching Brother Amadeuz at work. Uh, Actually, before we did that, it really piqued my interest when we were at Medinet Habu, which was a place that it's a huge temple that to me rivals Ipit Sut, the Karnak temple. That it was such a beautiful place, and I watched him as I was taking pictures. I just watched him work, uh, taking all of this footage, all of this film that he was of all of the stuff that was in this huge temple. And then when we got to Sudan, he was doing the same thing. I mean, he just spent time in the desert. He was going all over the place, taking still photography and um, uh, film, shooting film. And the one great thing that I can look forward to, because I don't know what's been lost at that museum in Sudan, but Amadeus, in addition to the, the film that he did, he has an art book of pictures that he took, and it's absolutely. I mean, words can't describe how beautiful this book is, and so a lot of the stuff that he took over there in Sudan, uh, we will be able to use it in the future to document some of the things that were lost, and then it's
Sure.
up to other scholars, filmmakers, writers to follow up and use some of his footage to continue to document the history of Kush, so that it's not completely lost.
Mm-hmm.
So
And
that's
if I can add on that point, you open this segment with a libation, right? And one of the purposes of the libation is to call forth ancestors, to remember them so that they can live through us, so that they can inspire us. And you don't just call them just to participate in the ceremony, right? Just to impress people with your ability to pronounce names that people have never heard of. You call them because they have work to do. You call them because they work through us. So what you were just describing about what Brother Amadeus did during that trip in 2016 was really the ancestors working through him to document and to preserve their history
Mm.
so that when those artifacts were destroyed, his documentation would last for all time, right? That's the continuum that can never be destroyed with any conflict, that can never be destroyed with attempts at erasure. The work that we're doing, the conversation that we're having right now is about the perpetuation of the lives of people who lived 5, 6, 7,000 years ago. We're giving them life right now.
correct, correct. what we're doing now is going to carry on to the future generations, for those who are not yet born.
Absolutely.
Oh,
Absolutely. So we in that context, we cry for Sudan. You know, I weep because of all of the people who's lost their lives or whose lives have been destroyed. All of the people, all of the fugitives. There's over 2 million fugitives. I weep for all of them. And I also understand that we have an obligation and a responsibility to protect their ancestors, to protect the memory of their ancestors, so that their ancestral memory, the spirit of their ancestors, will continue to live for all time. So no matter where you are in the world, you can always be a part, you can always participate in this process of ancestral intelligence, the amplification of Sudan, the amplification of Kush, the amplification of Kemet, and Nilotic people. That's part of our legacy and that's part of our responsibility. I just felt a compunction to share that because I don't want our listeners to think we're just talking about old dead people. We're talking about a process where the dead can continue to live as long as we remember them, right?
and continuing with that tradition, by honoring and talking about the people who are losing their lives and who are being, uh, there's actually a genocide that's being perpetuated in Sudan. It's been going on for a number of years. And so what the station is doing is bringing focus on these people so that their memory is not lost, so that we can honor them in the future as well, their sacrifices in their lives, so that people can remember them. Uh, but getting back to our trip to Sudan, one of the other things I that was very uh, impressionable upon me was the Nubian people themselves. How they just open up their homes, they open up their everything to us. Never seen any of us before, and this welcome into their house became our house.
Mm-hmm.
The hospitality, everything was just it was so amazing. Um, as a musician, I remember one evening after we were eating, there was a brother who was playing some instrument, and we were talking about the music. It's just so much, and you could see the continuity in the culture, the musical culture. It's just so much of our history is tied together, and I think the probably the most memorable uh, experience I had was when we were in the pyramid fields of Meroe and
Mm-hmm.
we slept out under the stars.
Buddy, buddy, buddy.
I always heard that expression, a blanket of stars in the sky or something like that. I could not believe how many stars were in the sky. You can actually see planets. It just gave me a lot more insight into how this culture gave uh, rise to timekeeping, calendars, the whole bit is because these people were able to study in that environment and dedicate themselves to building civilization.
Mm-hmm.
It was very profound. It was a great experience, and then having two older, well, I think I'm a little older than Renoko was, but to have you
No,
two,
actually, I think you're older than me. I'm older than Minoko.
no, you're older than Renoko, but you're older than me also.
Oh, I okay, okay. I'm
You
the
know,
older then.
and but to have you guys talk about the history as we were living through all of this stuff was also very profound.
Mm.
But it was a tremendous experience, and for me, coming from doing the dig like just a week earlier, and seeing the excavations and how it was done, and the things that you were discovering in South Africa, that just the whole thing was a mind blowing experience.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Well, Amadeus, let me ask you, as a filmmaker,
Mm-hmm.
um, as a filmmaker, as Amoye was describing that scene of the pyramid field at Meroe, just hundreds of pyramids, right? As far as the eye can see, hundreds of pyramids. How did that image set in your mind as a filmmaker?
It was very hard to capture on film. The film doesn't, even with a wide angle lens, it's really hard to do it justice, right? Just the scope of it, the massive amount of pyramids, the difference in the pyramids from Egypt struck me. I think you pointed out that one of the pyramids that we saw was the pyramid that's on the back of the dollar bill.
Yeah, thank you. Well, let me put a pin there because you only know what you know, right?
Yeah,
And I had always heard that the pyramid on the back of the dollar bill was an Egyptian pyramid. I wrote that in a couple of books because that's what I knew. But to go to Kush and to see the Kushite pyramids, the angle of the Kushite pyramids is steeper than the angle of the pyramids in Kemet. And so the realization of that really struck me because when the Great Seal was created in the late 1780s, it meant that the people who designed that had to have known about Kush, right? And they were intentional about selecting a Kushite pyramid for the reverse of the Great Seal of the United States as opposed to an Egyptian pyramid. So they knew something that they kept on the wraps.
exactly.
Yeah.
Another thing that struck me was how detailed the art was,
Mm.
particularly in Naka or Naga. I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but on the side of the Lion's Temple,
Ah, yeah, yeah.
you see those reliefs, right? And it reminds me of the Old Kingdom artwork that we saw in Saqqara,
Mm.
how the Nubian art is incredibly detailed. The figures are a lot huskier and stockier than they are, Egyptian art. They're a little bit more elongated, a little bit thinner, but the Nubian art definitely has a distinct flavor. Wider hips, wider shoulders. They're more robust, highly stylized. I mean, the jewelry, the kilts. I mean, it's just incredibly detailed. So that struck me, and that let me know that that is definite proof to me that the two cultures are definitely connected and probably most likely come from the same origin, from
Mm.
Upper Egypt and
Mhm.
down into Ethiopia even.
Exactly. So it's Upper Egypt, Upper Kemet, Upper Kush, and Lower Ethiopia, right? Where Lake Tana is, which is the source of the Blue Nile, which supplies 80% of the water that flows through from Khartoum north through Egypt into the Mediterranean Sea. So were it not for Ethiopia, there would be no Kush, there would be no Kemet. And as John Henry Clark often referred to the Nile River, he called it the world's oldest cultural highway. And we know that the people followed the flow of the river from south to north, and they brought their language, their art, their astronomy, their spiritual traditions, and everything that made them who they were. They brought it with them as they moved out of the highlands of Ethiopia and the lowlands of Uganda and just developed their personhood all along the entire 4,200-mile long length of the Nile River, you know?
I just want
So,
to add something to what Amadeus was saying. The stylized uh, architecture that he was talking about. During the so-called 25th dynasty, it was Shabaka and Taharka that came through Kemet and restored a lot of those temples and things. So again, what we just was talking about, uh, the, these people were restoring the works of their ancestors. That's the way they looked at it. It's
Exactly.
restoring what was lost from their ancestors, and they made it available for us today. So
That's a key point. I don't want you to just gloss over that point. They restored in Kemet what they had retained in Kush,
right,
which to me implies that was the source.
right. Yeah,
That was
because
the source.
both Shabaka and Tahaka refer to this is we restoring the works of our ancestors.
Exactly.
You know, and you listen to the Egyptologists, they try to say that, well, Nubia just assimilated into Kemet, and they just borrowed everything from. Well, these people have been intertwined. Their cultures have been intertwined
Hmm.
since the beginning of time, and they had matter of fact, in the book that I wrote, I talk about like the Middle Kingdom, almost all, from the Mentuhotep, all of the people in his regime were mostly Nubians, and then you talk about the 18th dynasty; those were mostly all Nubians. Their cultures have been intertwined from the beginning.
So let's do this. We've got less than 10 more minutes left in this segment of our show. So I want to give both of you all an opportunity to share with our listeners your latest product so that they will have an idea of what you've done and where they can secure your products, purchase your book, or see your film. So, Amoye, your book just dropped a week ago, as a matter of fact.
Yeah.
So tell us quickly about your book.
Okay, it's called Nasut Bidi, The Spirit of Our Ancestors, and it's the indigenous Black rulers of Egypt. Uh, what I did, the book is sort of like written in two parts. The first part of the book, I reiterated what was proven by Diop, Obenga, and John Jackson, John Henry Clark. So many of our scholars, have proved that Kemet was an indigenous Black African civilization. And so I just went through some of the points that was used to prove that, namely melanin studies, the cranial studies, genetic studies, and stuff like that, linguistic studies. Uh, so I outlined some of the key points of that. And then in the second part of the book, I think when we talked the last time, I remember growing up hearing that our people once were kings and queens in Africa, and I wanted to know more about who these kings and queens were. And so I decided to take 10 people and do short biographies, five men and five women. So we have the male and female energy, and I gave short biographies of some of these people and let you know something about their accomplishments and achievements and advancing the culture. And I also wrote a lot of metal nature because I wanted to expose the younger uh, people, the younger audiences, to want to learn the language. And what I originally wanted to do in the book is to have it used as a textbook. I'm a retired educator, and I wanted to write a book that could be used in education because I foresaw what was going to happen in terms of what's happening today with they destroying our history, literally making it illegal to teach Black history.
Okay. Dismantling the Department of Education, if you will.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So I wanted this to be a teaching guide, and I used as a model. Well, I attempted to use that. As I got into the work, it became I just wanted to do it this way instead of my original intent. I wanted to do it like how you did your book, The Nile Valley Civilizations, where you had a textbook and a study guide. And the
Sure.
same thing that Robin Walker did with his When We Ruled is a textbook and a study guide so that people can actually use it as a curriculum guide in the schools and, teach children at different stages, the history and how to use the materials and give them impetus to do further research down the line. So that's
Right.
basically what it is in a nutshell. Right
And
now,
where can people pick up a copy of
right
the book?
now, they can just send me an email. My email address is amoyemaat@gmail.com, and I will
I
personally,
need you to spell Amoye for folk.
I'm going to do that. I will personally autograph the books for them and send it through the mail. My email is AMOYEMAAT, that's amoyemaat@gmail.com.
Cool. Thank you so much. And for those listening to this show in DC, I'm sure the book will be available at St. Pofa. And for those of you all who are listening from Baltimore, you can more than likely go to Everyone's Place in Baltimore. So it will be a hot item, a hot read for this season. But Amadeus, you've got 3 films. Where can people view your film work?
Yeah, they could view it. Probably the best place to get it is outofdarknessfilm.com. Outofdarknessfilm.com. You can get all 3 films there. Out of Darkness, the original one, came out 2016. Heavy as the Crown, Volume 1 came out 2022. And the latest film, Out of Darkness, Heavy as the Crown, Volume 2, just released last week as well, November 11th to be specific. All 3 are available on my site. And they're pretty much streaming on every major platform. We're going to make a big push around February for Black History Month, African History Month, to get on all the rest of the platforms. But Volume 2 can be streamed on Vimeo on demand if you just search Heavy as the Crown Volume 2.
Okay. And let me do a
Don't forget the artwork, Amadeus.
yeah, the book, the
Yes.
photo book.
Thank you for the plug. Yeah.
Now, I haven't
And
seen
the
it
photo
yet.
book.
I haven't seen it yet. So
I'll send you a
It is
copy, brother.
you
fire.
got me really interested in it.
It is fire,
Yeah.
man.
So
You got to
so
have that.
yeah. So the photo book is actually called The Temples of Ancient Egypt, Volume 1. In Volume 1, we have all of the photos from Karnak, Luxor, Hatshepsut's mortuary temple, Medinet Habu, Dendera, and Abydos are in that. There's going to be a second volume of that, and then most likely put out an independent one on Nubia with all the photos from Nubia. So that's going to be really special. I spent a good day of today looking over the photos, and man,
Cool.
it's like I said, it's very hard to capture, but I just shot everything that I saw and documented it. Like,
Well, look, let me say this. You know, when I first met you, I knew you were an artist. So you actually went to school for filmmaking. You're not somebody who just picked up a camera and just started shooting and claimed to be a filmmaker. You are a filmmaker, and the quality of your films, man, the look, the color, the editing is top notch. I mean, it's the best I've seen in this genre. And I'm not saying that just to blow you up. I'm saying it because it's the truth. I'm an artist and I appreciate good art. And you have produced an outstanding product. So I'm quite proud of what you've done. And I look forward to working with you in the future. And Brother Moye, as a retired educator, you understand how important it is that young people see themselves in history and know that their ancestors had a role in shaping history. We hear about disasters all the time. We hear about what we aren't doing. It's important to hear about and to see what we have done because as Brother Renoko has said on numerous occasions, what you have done, you have the capacity to do again. So, I want to thank both of you all for being with me to help amplify Sudan, to help amplify Nile Valley culture, Nile Valley people, Nile Valley civilization. Because with all of these wars, the physical wars and the psychological wars and the educational wars, we are under a full-fledged assault, a ending, a relentless assault against our humanity, against our right to tell our own story. So it's important that we have writers, it's important that we have filmmakers who are courageous enough to make sure that these stories of our ancestors are told. So both of you all have considered to stick around and go into the overflow room with me. So I'm going to invite you all to sit tight for a minute and let me wrap up my obligations here at WPFW. I also want to amplify something that you, Amoye, said earlier about the importance of PFW, the importance of PFW setting aside this time, these more than 12 hours to amplify Sudan for us to tell our story. And as I stated at the top of the show, we're in the season of giving. So whether you're going to be celebrating Thanksgiving, whether you're going to be celebrating Christmas and Kwanzaa and engaged in Black Friday activities come next week, don't forget WPFW. Don't forget those who sustain you and who constantly give to you. So you can still go to WPFWFM.org to make a pledge drive. You can use the WPFW app, this wonderful app that's been developed to make a pledge to keep this station alive, to keep programming like today's programming accessible. It's part of the historical record. So people will have the benefit of listening to this entire day of programming from now on. So we have an obligation and a responsibility to make history, to document history, and to ensure that those who come behind us will be able to access the history that has been made. So everybody has a part to play. We all aren't just sitting back. We all may not be fortunate enough to travel, to visit these far-flung places, to do films or to produce books, but we can support those who are doing the work. And that's what's so critically important in this time of erasure. And if you don't realize that now, then shame on you. But if you do realize it, I want you to just understand what time it is, and we'll understand what time it is. So this is Tony Browder. This is Browder File Show. I'll be back next week with another guest talking about another publication. I want you to remember what Maurice White is always encouraging us to do. Remember that it's all about love, not that selfish love, but a selfless love that reinforces everybody who poured themselves into you. Tony Browder, peace out. I'll see you next week. Who poured themselves into you. Tony Browder, peace out. I'll see you next week. Okay, we are off the air and we're back. We're in the overflow room now. So, brothers, thank you all so much for giving of yourselves. And let's do a deeper dive. Brother Amoye, hold up a copy of your book so folk can see your book. All right.
Okay.
And I want you to read from any passage in your book that you want to share with our viewers. Because folk on YouTube now can actually see you. So share with us. Tell us a bedtime story, brother.
Okay, there's so many things. Let me see. Because what I did was I picked 5 of the Supitis that.
Now, in Subidi, explain that. What is that?
Okay, that is the indigenous name that was given to the rulers of Kemet. They were never called pharaohs, right? That was sort of like a corruption of the palace that they live in, and by the Greeks. And so it wound up being pharaohs, but it was the great house where they actually lived in. But their name was called Nasut Vidi. That was the title. And what it refers to is literally he of well, the Nasut comes from the soot plant, which was the plant of Upper Kemet. And Biti refers to the bee, which was a symbol of Lower Kemet. So literally, the Nasut Biti translates something like he of the sedge and the bee. So in other words, it talks about the person who was the ruler of the two lands, right? So that was Kemet, Tameri, the two lands.
Mhm. Okay. Or another way of saying that is the person responsible for unifying the two lands and maintaining the union between the two lands, if I understand what you're saying correctly.
Right. Um, well, I'm just going to briefly, I'm going to read about Menchu Hotep. Uh, Mentu Hotep was the sixth Nasut Bidi of the so-called 11th dynasty and the founder of the Middle Kingdom. He is called the founder of the Middle Kingdom because, like Narmer, thousands of years before him, he unified Upper and Lower Kemet. During this time, Kemet was what they called one of the intermediate periods.
Mhm.
The country was not unified as one central government.
It
And
was a period of political and social instability, kind of like what we're dealing with right now, I think.
yeah, there was a lot of isfet or chaos, confusion that was going around. And
Kind
so,
of like what we're experiencing right now, as I say.
exactly,
History does have a habit of repeating itself.
yeah. So the ninth and 10th dynasty, which was sort of running concurrently in different parts of Lower Kemet, was run by a group, um, the Intefs, and then the Lower Kemet, which was the 11th, I mean Upper Kemet, which was the 11th dynasty, was ruled by another group. So what happens in the story that I was going to tell, uh, they sort of like coexisted peacefully, but there was the last king of the 10th dynasty was a king called Meroe, and his father had written, it's a famous piece of literature, instructions to King Meroe, where he instructed his son to watch out for the Amu, which were the Asiatics,
Hmm.
saying they were always trying to infiltrate into Kemet. And he described them in a very uh, harsh way of, he was saying these people are like crocodiles. They don't have the courage to fight you face to face. They sneak you like,
They
crocodiles,
lurk beneath the surface, huh?
and then they snatch it. He said, and they've never won a battle since the time of Heru, but they're always sticking around, And so when you hear these Egyptologists talk about the Kushites and how the Egyptians or the Kemetiu hated Kushites, no one they hated the Amu more than anything, and he was telling this story to his son Marakari. But then what happened was there was a war, a little skirmish between these two groups, and the sacred cemetery of Upper Kemet was defiled by the people of the 10th dynasty.
Mhm.
That enraged Menchu Hotep. And so he went to war against them. And then when he defeated them, he reunified the country. And so that's why he's considered the founder of the 11th dynasty.
Got it. And that would be the Middle Kingdom then.
Middle Kingdom, yeah. I mean,
Oh, you going to read?
I basically
Oh, you just told the story. Okay. I just want to make sure want to make sure we're on the same page. All right, cool. So you've got numerous stories like that in your book,
yeah,
brief biographies of five males and five females,
and
giving people an inside view of the mind of the rulers of Kemet.
yeah. So the five male rulers is Sahure, who was Nasubidi of the fifth dynasty, which was the old kingdom.
Hmm. And
Mentuhotep,
he's actually on the cover of your book, correct?
correct, right.
All right. Yeah.
Mentuhotep,
Let me just, the artist in me feels compelled to reference this cover. This is the same king whose picture graces the cover of the original version of Stolen Legacy.
I did not know that until you pointed it out to me, because my copy, and I've had my copy of Stolen Legacy for a very long time, but it wasn't the original proof.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
so I didn't see that copy until you showed it to me, and I was like,
Mhm.
wow, this is
Yeah.
it's amazing how things.
Well, we got to thank Asa Hilliard for that, because Asa had an original copy of Stolen Legacy, which I believe was first published in 1955, and then it went out of print. James died the following year, and Asa was in San Francisco. He was close with uh, Julian Richardson, I think is his name, the founder of Marcus Bookstore. And he owned the bookstore, but he also owned a printing press. So Asa gave him his copy of Stolen Legacy to reprint, to get that book back in circulation in 1976, I believe. So Asa replicated the original cover. And then other people have since published the book, since it's in the public domain now. And there's probably about 4 or 5 different covers of that one book. Yeah.
Yeah. So the other Antiquities are Mentuhotep, which I spoke about, the 11th dynasty, Senuseret II from the 12th dynasty, Amenemhat II from the 12th dynasty, and Amenhotep III from the 18th dynasty. And then the women were, the first one was Mernith from the first dynasty, it's the old kingdom. Sabuk Neferu, who was the last Nasukbidi of the 12th dynasty, and she was the daughter of Amenhotep III. I mean, excuse me, Amenemhat III. Uh, then we have Amos Nefertari, famous Amos Nefertari,
Yeah, my girl.
who was venerated in her lifetime. You know how important you got to be for the country to venerate you during your lifetime. She's from the 18th dynasty. Hatshepsut from the 18th dynasty, and Queen T from the
Yeah,
18th
my
dynasty,
girl.
who was the wife of Amenhotep the third, and the grandmother of Tutankhamun.
Mm-hmm. Let me say this before I switched over to you, Amadeus, and have you talk about your film. I was
Mhm.
glancing through your book today, and I was looking at your description of Amenhotep III and the so-called Colossus of Memnon. And you made reference to the two 65-foot high statues of Amenhotep III that stood at the entrance to his temple. And then it dawned on me. I never thought about this before, but those statues were the same height as the statues of Ramesses II at his temple in Abu Simbel, right?
Yeah. Now, I found out something interesting when doing my research. So, Amenhotep III was actually the most prolific builder in all of Kemet.
Mm-hmm.
Where, if you read a lot of books, they will say it was Ramesses II.
Sure.
But what it is that Ramesses II usurped a few statues, and some of them were from Amenhotep, uh, which is, you know, one of the things that amazed me about Medinet Habu is because I think originally it was, some of it was done by Ramesses III, and when he did the carvings of the metal netture, he did it so deep. I mean, I was able to
Nice.
actually put my hand in the glyphs.
Exactly.
He did it so deep like that, so that, because I guess he knew his father's proclivity. He, he didn't want nobody to scratch out his names, his words, or anything. So yeah, but that, a lot of that was going on where, because people, again, we talk about Asa Hilliard. He says that really, to understand Kemet, you need a timeline, because this is a civilization that spanned thousands of years.
Hmm.
So, you know, people will come 1,000 years later and see an edifice and say, well, no one, the people who did it were gone a long time ago, so I can use some of this. Um,
Yeah.
and so that was done. It might seem like sacrilege to us today, but to them there's only so much space that you can build on. So they went over some, of their predecessors' work. And so that was just an interesting thing. But that Colossus of Memnon was right across the street from the apartment building that you rented out. So we see that every morning going to work.
Yep. And let me share this with you as well. I would often, walk down to that region and just talk to folk, right? Just engage the farmers and the vendors in conversation. And the guy, well, I don't want to mention his name because I don't want to get him in trouble. But a lot of that land is farmland. On the left side of the road, you have shops and hotels and residences. On the right side of the land, it's right side of the road, it's all farmland. And this Egyptian told me that as farmers are tilling the soil, they unexpectedly unearth statues or pieces of statues. And what they do is destroy the statues, break them up, and throw them in the river, because if they report to the Antiquities department that they found a statue, then the Antiquities department will come in and confiscate their land. So when you speak in terms of Amenhotep III being a greater builder than Ramesses II, then what I know for a fact is that many statues were destroyed by contemporary Arabs who found artifacts and didn't want to run the risk of having their ancestral homeland taken from them. So they destroy it because it doesn't mean anything to them. It doesn't have any value to them. So
spirituality, that's a relationship between you and divinity, you and that which is divine, you and that which is responsible for all creation. Religion means to bind, to hold, to control.
Religions have been used as the primary agent of dominance and control of African peoples.
If you control the mind or the thinking of any person, you control their reality.
Religion only means to realign. Re means to go back to align yourself, because everything was God.
Spirituality is I'm embracing the universe. It's based upon knowledge, wisdom.
Western religions is an Western interpretation of an African theology and cosmology that has existed for thousands of years.
We are not looking at the world through our ancestors' eyes. We are impacted by concepts of a white creator God that created all things, and particularly a male God.
The children of Africa that left out of Africa, they begin to have a struggle with the feminine and the masculine as oppositional energies, and really wanted the masculine to be primary.
It was principally men who crafted this notion of the divine in masculine terms and left out the women.
It is without doubt that the ancient cultures of the world were matriarchies, not patriarchy.
And so there were images of this black mother and child that were regarded as the black Madonna and child.
They understand that their version of the Madonna child is simply their rendition of an archetype. And that archetype is black.
The woman was revered as a creator.
God creates. A woman creates. So maybe the true gods on this earth is women. And we as men will sit here to protect God while she creates.
Just share with the audience what they saw in that clip, and what else can they expect to see from the film?
Yeah, so you're referring to the trailer.
Yes, the
Yeah,
trait,
so
the
yeah,
clip.
so
I'm
this
sorry. I'm using generic language. I'm speaking with a professional. Let me get my vocabulary correct.
Yeah, so the trailer is to Heavy as the Crown Volume 2. So Heavy as the Crown is understandably a massive project, right? Because it focuses solely on ancient Egypt, ancient Kemet, and it ties into Nubia, which I think is really special, particularly in the context of this conversation. So volume 1, so let me say this. I got the inspiration from, also in spirit of the 25th dynasty, from the Shabaka stone. The Shabaka stone is separated into two pieces. I think one reads, from left to right, and the other reads from right to left towards the center. The left-hand side is described as the drama, where it kind of reads like a play. And that is the reason why, and the second part reads as a discourse, like an explanation. So I took that kind of motif and applied it to Heavy as the Crown, where Heavy as the Crown Volume 1 has the drama, specifically the Asarian drama. The story of Asar being murdered by his brother Set and being brought back to life after being avenged by his son Heru, who defeated Set, and Asar, also known by the Greeks as Osiris, was made the king or the ruler of the underworld, and Heru, his son, of the physical world. Also depicted in Volume 1 is the judgment scene and the weighing of the heart. And I might, add that all of the animation, all of the Medu Netter, all of the figures that you see in the animations is all hand-drawn by myself, not to toot my own horn. Yeah. But everything is like custom-made, hand-drawn. Like you said, highly visual. The color is very, vibrant. Very vibrant, right? Spent a lot of time. I don't even want to tell you how much time I spent on the light sword scene with Heru fighting Set. I had to basically rotoscope that frame by frame, and that part took at least a month to do, maybe even more. So that's Volume 1. Volume 2, it goes in more of the discourse. It covers the pyramid texts. It covers the creation story, of Atum, Nun, and Ptah coming out of the waters. It makes the parallel to the scientific principles of matter, the creation of matter and energy. And then the strong focus of Volume 2 is delving into the feminine principle and the importance of the divine feminine in Kemet, which I feel like gets overlooked significantly. So there's a whole 20-minute chapter on that, detailing Set, Mut, a lot of the female rulers. Like in Kush, it highlights the fact that Kush was ruled principally during the Meroitic period by over 16 queens. And one of the earliest queens on record went by the name of Nahirko. And I was able to capture her tomb. Unbeknownst to me at the time, I didn't know until I was looking at the footage later, in Meroe. So I think she was around the 2nd century BC. And then there's other queens that are depicted in Naga or Naka in relief. So I just wanted to highlight that. And then we have a chapter on the Black Madonna in Child, which I'm sure you can explain, has its origins with Set and her son Heru sitting on her lap. And a lot of people don't know that all of these Black Madonna figures that you see all are in Europe and Spain come from Osset and Heru. So I went to Spain to capture that. I went to Montserrat and got the Black Madonna on film. They were a little upset at me, but I managed to get it on film. So I just wanted to make that connection. Volume 2 also covers the Greek and Roman conquest of ancient Kemet and how that led to the formation of modern Christianity or Western religion as we know it today. It talks about the Islam and the Islamic expansion through Kemet and through North Africa in relation to the slave trade. And then volume 2 concludes with a chapter on restoration. How do we get this back? How do we recover? How do we remember, making the comparison to the Asarian drama of how Asar was dismembered into 14 pieces. And Osset's job was to, in gathering 13 of the pieces and reconstructing his body and anointing it with oils, she remembered him. And we need to do the same thing with our history, reconstruct it, and remember who we are, which is pretty much my goal as a filmmaker in capturing all of this stuff.
Cool. Well, give me quickly a listing of some of the principles in your film, in Out of Darkness Part 2. You've got some pretty heavy hitters.
Yes. Yourself. Atlantis, your daughter, who did an excellent job. We have brother Mfudishi Jehutimus. We have Dr. Wade Nobles. We have Taj Tariq Bey, Sabir Bey, Dr. Chike Akua, and a special cameo. Should I give it away? Special cameo by brother Ranoko Rashidi.
Oh, right on.
Yeah.
Right on. Cool,
Yeah.
cool.
And Professor James Small and Kaba Kamene. Don't let me forget those.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So a wonderful representation of scholars like you two, who did not go through the academy to be trained in the history of ancient Egypt, but took an interest in the subject matter because they realized there was a void and someone had to be the voice of the ancestors and speak for them. So what I want to be able to do is add in the description of the show all the details on where people can go to view the film, purchase the film. You've got merchandise associated with the film as well as the publication. So we'll make sure that folk will be able to access all of that information. And you're going to be doing some screenings or some Zoom events with some of the participants in the film. Is that correct?
Absolutely. We did our first virtual screening on the 9th of November. We'll be following that up with a few more virtual screenings and just some podcast episodes. There's a sister that I'm going to be working with. Her name is Dr. Taylor Cummings, and we have about 6 podcast episodes we have planned. We're going to definitely pull you in on one of those. So that will be an ongoing discussion in promotion of the film.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So Brother Amoye, again, I want to give you an opportunity to talk about any aspect of your work. Well, do this. Let me ask you a question, because there's one segment in the book that really captured my attention, and that is the discussion about King Tut and malaria. Yeah. Share those findings with the audience.
Yeah, there was 2 groups of scientists who examined the mummy of King Tutankhamun. And, you know, the story goes that he had malaria, and that that probably was the cause of some of his deformities, and possibly contributed to his death. But they ran some tests. Now, you know, I am not a geneticist. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a scientist. But I was just reporting on this because it seemed to be a new discovery. It was peer reviewed research, and I just sort of put it out there. But they were saying that in many parts of Africa where malaria is prevalent, people start to have something like an immunity to the malaria as they get older. That when malaria kills people, it's usually young children. Once they get a certain age, they have these antibodies that sort of fight off the malaria. And you know that I believe that sort of is what's behind sickle cell. You know, sickle cell was an adaptation to fight for the body to fight off certain diseases, and I think malaria was one of them.
Sure.
But they were saying that their research showed that he might have had sickle cell, and that is why his limbs were deformed. You know, you don't hear a lot about his deformities, but he was a teenager when he died, and he had to walk with two walking sticks. You know, his body was really deformed, and they posited the theory based on their research that he might have had sickle cell. So it's nothing definitive, but you know, I just thought it was really curious about it because the form of sickle cell that they said that they figured that he had from their research was a strain that comes from West Africa. So that was interesting. That's the part that really poked my interest. It was that, well, you know, there's a connection here between West Africa and the Nile Valley, as you would always say, from the Nile Valley to the Niger Valley. You know, so there was correspondence. You know, yeah, there was traffic going all the way from the Sahel region to East Africa. You know, especially during the time when before the Sahara became a desert. There was this exchange of cultures and ideas going all the way across the continent, and it's not inconceivable that he could have caught well, he could have had sickle cell. You know, so it was and it was the interesting thing. It was found by two different groups of scientists, one from Germany and then another from Italy.
And the thing that's interesting about that is that outside of your manuscript, I've not heard or read anything at all about this. And it speaks to the value of the work that both of you all are doing. We understand erasure. We understand controlling a subject matter and determining what information will be released to the general public and what information will be withheld. And in our fight to tell our stories, we've got to do some deep digging and tell those stories that others have been sitting on for quite some time, for far too long. Well, brothers, look, we're gonna have to wind down because this is the third Wednesday of the month. This is Wisdom Wednesday, and we use the same platform for our Wisdom Wednesday program. So I promised Sister Adjua that I would be done by 6:30. So that gives me 3 more minutes before I wrap up. So I'll leave the 3 minutes to you all. You can divide it 90 seconds each. So Amoye, let's have your closing comments.
Well, my closing comments is concerning Brother Amadeus' work. I really love the work. I saw the first 2 volumes of his documentaries, and this one, you know, it's not only like the Christmas of the scenes and everything. He has his own style. He has a identifiable style. It's just like when you see certain filmmakers, you all you got to do is see like 5, 10 minutes of the film, and you know
that's Ryan Coogler.
that's Ryan Coogler, that's Spike Lee, it's
yeah.
Amadeuz Christ. You know, he has a certain flair. It's just hard to describe, but once you see his work, you really appreciate it. And being in those places and actually seeing, like I remember in, like I said, in Medinet Habu, seeing the intensity of his work. I mean, he was just fixed. You know, he was like part of the statues there. He was just like, you know, fixed on taking so many shots and doing so many different things, and then to see the final product, that really blew my mind. So I commend you on your work, man. It's really outstanding.
Appreciate it.
It's really outstanding, and you know, I tell my grandchildren when I show them, because I have the volume 3, and I was having them look at some of it, and I was saying, you see the brother that made this film, me and him were roommates in Egypt. You know, even though it was only like I think one day he came in and we spent the night together there before we went out to Sudan. But I'm proud to be associated with the brother and his work. You know, I really enjoy your work and keep it up, man.
Thank you. Much appreciated. Much appreciated. Much appreciated. Okay,
yes,
I guess
well,
my 90
out,
seconds. You know, I was just overwhelmed. The first time we went to Kemet in 2016, like I said, it was just very difficult to really get it on film how massive it is, how massive these places are. So the first time I spent just trying to get as much as of the temple, of the scenery that I can get to show you the spacing, right? And then you can kind of see how small, you know, the people are that are standing in these courts and these temples as compared to the statues. So you can kind of get a scope of how massive this stuff is. The second time I got to go with you in 2019, I focused primarily on the photo part. Even though both trips I was alternating between film and photography, but there's just so much to capture. I was just looking at it almost through the eyes of a child and wonder. You know, if you take the trip, you know, it's an unforgettable experience, but to be able to capture it on film and have that preserved for all time was just a very, very enlightening and experience for me. And I was very honored to be there, particularly with you, Brother Browder, for you to have to put all of that stuff in context and those conversations that I had. You did wear me out.
Good. But you're still here. All right.
You did wear me out. When I got back, I knew I needed to get back in the gym. Just following you around, particularly when we went to Saqqara and we went to see the pyramid texts and all of that stuff. It was just an unforgettable, memorable experience, again, that I was fortunate enough to have this skill set at that time to develop and capture that information and put it in a film context.
Well, good. Well, I want to say that I'm blessed to have met both of you and to have spent time with both of you. I'm proud of the work that you all have created and the role that you're playing in order to ensure that our stories are told and that the ancestors are honored. That's, as Dr. Clark has said on numerous occasions, that's sacred work. And I'm proud to have said that I've done this sacred work with two brothers I admire and respect wholeheartedly. So
we are proud to be associated with you in this and your mentorship and all the work that you've done over the years. It's really appreciated And I hope, well, I don't hope, I know many of our people feel the same way about the work that you've done. You've done things that no other African has done in the history of our people. And we appreciate you. We salute you too, brother.
Absolutely.
Thank you.